Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Happy Hour Live webcast from WhiskyCast.com. And I should say good afternoon, good evening, good morning, wherever you are. Once again, that'll become apparent in just a minute. But I'm Mark Gillespie in the WhiskyCast studio. We are not in Las Vegas this week. Hope you had a chance to watch last week's webcast from Las Vegas with Richard Patterson and Craig Bridger of the Delmore. Had a great time last week, but we are back at home now and got a bit of breaking news for you. I'm showing these on the table today because the Whiskey Ferry just delivered a couple of bottles from Lynchburg, literally within the last hour. A Jack Daniel's bottled in bond, believe it or not, joining the bottled in bond bandwagon. But more interestingly is this Jack Daniel's triple mash bottled in bond. And what this is a combination of Jack Daniel's bonded Tennessee whiskey, this stuff, plus bonded Jack Daniel's rye, plus a bonded Jack Daniel's American malt. That's right. The boys and girls in Lynchburg, I should say, have been playing around with malt whiskey for at least 4 years now. So that's going to be really interesting to try. They just literally got off the Whiskey Ferry's truck, so I'm not going to taste them yet. Try to let them sit for a little bit and get back up to room temperature, but I'll have my tasting notes for them. The box did not come with an embargo on it, so I figure let's go ahead and share the news right now. And no, Christopher Malloy, the breaking news is that Elon Musk has not bought Macallan, has not bought anything in the whiskey industry, and let's hope for our sake that he never does. Frankly, let's just keep him away from that. If you saw my Twitter feed, you'll see how I feel about that one. We don't want to go there. What we do want to go to is talk about Tasmanian single malts. And as our pal Malt Mariners says from Germany, oh boy, I can't wait. Hope I can stay long enough after this week or stay awake long enough, but we'll try to keep you awake right now. Want to bring in our friends Holly Seidewand from Her Whiskey Love and First Fill Spirits up in Saratoga, New York, along with Mathew and Jules Cooper, the proprietors of Fannys Bay Distillery in Tasmania. How are you all doing today?
Good, thank you.
Thanks. Good.
And Mathew, Jules, you guys got up especially early to do this on Saturday morning, which I really appreciate. Give us the origin story of Fannys Bay.
Yeah.
Well, we started nearly 9 years ago in 2014. Matthew said to me, I think I'll start a whiskey distillery. And I went, oh, gosh, okay, that stuff that burns your stomach. But now I've become a very good whiskey drinker. And we were fortunate enough to be able to do it at home in our shed that we already had. It took us 12 months to get the licenses, and we put our first barrel down in November 2014, and then we released in May 2017 because we went for the smaller 20-litre casks, so they matured a bit quicker.
Mathew, your side of the story, because I know there's always two versions of this origin story.
Well, it wasn't too far wrong as on the sort of person that I come up with these ideas, and which I did, and started to put the distillery together, built the still and the fermenters and everything, and so the owner of Sinapius Vineyards down the road, I was working there at the time as a mechanic, and got talking to the owner one day about starting a distillery, and he came up with the name for the distillery, Fannys Bay. That's what the bay is where we're at. And he used to take his two little girls there swimming. And once we got going, every time I saw him, he put his hand out for royalties for the name.
That's a great story. And you're the Sinopius Vineyard. You've actually bottled some of your whiskey and some of their Pinot Noir casks. I'm tasting one right now, and I was really impressed with it. Holly, explain the story of how you wound up bringing these into the U.S. because I know it's a bit complex.
Yes, I won't bore folks with how you get product into the United States, because it's actually not very pleasant or fun. But yeah, I've known Mathew and Jules for now almost 6 years. I found myself in Tasmania visiting distilleries, and they're my adopted Tasmanian Australian family now, and I'm so lucky to have them in my life. And so a few years went by. I had always wanted to showcase what was going on in Tasmania, and specifically with Fannys Bay. I loved the whiskey they were producing, and I think they're such a beautiful couple as well. And so I tried a few years back and just didn't have the means right away, and had some other projects going on. And as most people will know, a lot of distilleries in Tasmania are quite small, Fannys Bay being one of them. So a few years went by, we kept in touch, and a good friend of mine, Andrew, he has a small boutique import company called Discovery Bottles. He gave me a ring and said, hey, I'll do all of the fun logistics, taxation, freight forwarder work, which was not my specialty by any means, being on the phone with shipping companies and getting rates. My specialty, I guess I would say, and my passion is bringing their story to life and bringing brand stories to life. And so my first call was to Mathew and Jules. This was now a year and a half ago. I mean, it takes time to get product over here, especially with logistics now. And we got some samples. The plan was to pick 2, I think, casks, and we brought over everything that they sent us, because I could not decide, and I wanted a full display of the types of maturation that they had. So this is the first time that Fannys Bay will ever be in the United States, and I'm so thrilled to represent them here, since we can't all get to Tasmania instantly from the US.
What is it about Tasmania that lends itself to whiskey making? Because I've had the chance to visit Tasmania and have been talking about Tassie malts for well over a decade, and I've always thought that if you could ever get past the issues of production and being able to produce them in quantity, that Tassie malts could really compete on the world stage. What is it about Tasmania that really lends itself to whiskey making?
Well, for us here in the north of the state, or the northeast, it is somewhat different to around the southern area of the state. Because we live in the Bass Strait, we get a lot of frontal weather coming through, so that's not quite like Scotland, but very much so. And then in the summer, because we're right next to the sea, we don't get the hot temperatures that they'll get down in Hobart, down around that area. We stay very much around the 18 degrees, so the bond room stays sort of moderately temperature. So that all helps, and yeah.
But I think it's the cooler temperatures Tassie has that help the whiskey. Yeah, very similar perhaps to Scotland, which we still haven't been to. So no, I think it's colder over there. Our Scottish friends that live down here tell us so. Yeah. And that's part of our story too. We have Irene, our friend across the road. She helps us with all the computer skills, because I'm hopeless at computer. So we dragged her into the fold, and she does all that. I'm sort of the artistic person that bottles, labels. I designed the labels, and I write on all the barrels and things like that. So yeah, we've all got our jobs, and Mathew's the whiskey maker. So, yes, we all get in and help.
Irene's the Scottish content to Fannys Bay. She's from the Scottish family.
Puts that Scottish touch.
That's it. You've got it.
And perfect question for me and Bruce in Scotland. As Tasmania is a whiskey hub for Australia, do you ever get compared to Islay at all?
Oh.
No.
Good question. Not really. It's
not that we've heard, but no.
Maybe that will be New Zealand. We'll see who makes more peated malt in the country.
And Gary, who lives there and considers you guys to be his local distillery, says, did not forget about your painting on the label, Julie. And I don't have the label in front of me, but if you have one you can hold up, we can take a picture of it. We can bring it in close here.
Oh, yes, yes.
That's yours on the back, Julie?
Yes.
That's beautiful. Tell us how you did it.
It was already a small painting I had done, and because it was by the sea, I liked the idea to have something that related to us living by the sea. I'll get the
original painting, eh?
No, you can't. And so I worked on that, and then I kind of thought we needed a branding. I'm not sure how important that's worked out, but I designed the FBD with our sailing background. The D is supposed to look a bit like a sail. So that was my concept. And I took quite a long time to find the bottle. I wanted it to stand out on a shelf and and be a little bit different. So, that's what it came up with. It did take a long time though, didn't it, Matthew?
And the reason is that we're from a sailing background. That's why the trademark was meant to look like a sail on a boat.
It definitely does. You did a good job. And everyone, I think, saw this is the U.S. Bottling, one of the bottlings. If you want to hold yours up, Matthew, they have the 500 mLs over in Australia. This is the massive, you can't really tell, it doesn't do it justice, but this is the massive 750 that we have here in the U.S. So they didn't have 700s yet in the United States for your beautiful bottle, Jules, but you approved the 750, although it is a bit heavy, that's for sure.
Sorry, Holly.
That's
I write on all the labels and sign them all individually, which I think Holly did as well, and perhaps wasn't so excited about that job.
Let's explain this, because these were not bottled in Australia. The U.S. bottles were actually bottled in the United States, right, Holly?
Yes.
That's right.
Yes.
Correct. Yes. So you can bottle outside of Australia. So we just because of, as most folks will know that listen to you, Mark, with bottle size rules, although changing, 500 mLs are still not something that we utilize here in the United States. So it was, instead of shipping bottles over there and then having them bottle it and then ship it back, as most people will know, Australia, Tasmania specifically, it can be quite the journey to get there at times. And so we brought it over in totes, natural Cask-Strength, non-chill filtered. I remember talking to Matthew. I said, leave as much everything in that you possibly can. I want to see sediment. I want to see it all in the totes, and it arrived safely here, and we were able to bottle it here. And I studied Jules' handwriting, so I had to change my twos. And I hope I did an okay job. We'll see if she approves when I go back over there.
We have a question from Tor Christensen in Norway, who's a distiller up there near the Arctic Circle. He wants to know what your average temperature is around in Tasmania. And obviously there's 4 seasons. So what's the hot and what's the cold?
Where we are on the coast, the hottest it would get would be maximum 22 degrees, and which is most unusual because most of the temperature is kept down by the sea breeze coming in. So it's kept down to 18, 20. During the winter, it'll get down around the 6s to 7 degrees, sometimes 0 in the mornings.
No,
it does, yeah. But it doesn't. But the difference between here and inland, it doesn't get the frost because you get the breeze off the sea. But it doesn't stay at that very long. It'll only be a couple of hours. So, yeah, average temperature. Look, if you average it out, it'd be 14 degrees, something like that, I would imagine.
We have a good question from Greg Serafian in Paris about what's the oldest Tasmanian cask bottled. between, say, Tasmanian Distillery, which is Sullivan's Cove, Hellier's Road, or Lark, if anyone knows. It's interesting because this year marks the 30th anniversary of when Bill Lark opened his distillery in Hobart, and really sort of became the father of modern Australian craft distilling. So my guess is that it probably would be a Lark because they've still got some of the oldest whiskey around. Obviously, I'm not going to ask you this as a trivia question, but do you happen to know offhand?
No, I'm not 100% sure, but it would be a Lark, I would imagine.
Probably out in the market, though, oldest would be not the U.S. market, but would be Hellier's Road. Wouldn't you think, Matthew? I mean, maybe there's probably some older casks at Lark, but I would maybe out in the market.
Oldest cask. Yeah. It could be Hellier Road might contain the oldest cask that's still going. Yes, I'd have to research that one. Yeah. Yeah, because basically there was the three distilleries: Hellier Road, Lark, and Sullivan's Cove.
Oh, Gary Atkins.
Oh, what's Gary got?
Gary says Sullivan's has done at 21, but David Taylor says the Lark Legacy would probably be the oldest. So there's some disagreement among some of your Tasmanian counterparts.
Oh, you'll get that amongst those people.
Matthew, why did you decide that you wanted to do a distillery in the first place?
Well, I've been a whiskey drinker since my early teens, teenage years. But as I said, a whiskey drinker, not so much an appreciative type drinker. It sort of started off just as an idea, and then I thought, well, why not give it a go? And it took off from there. Yeah, I didn't expect it to take off quite how it did, but it seemed to ramp up. Yes.
Matthew is being humble.
If you knew Matthew, once he gets an idea, nothing else, it's 100%. So that was it. I was a bit worried, and he built the still and everything. He forgot to mention that. I think he built the still himself and put it all together. So yes, here we are.
Yeah,
wait a second. You built the still yourself. I've heard horror stories about this because I've seen Peter Bignell's place down at Belgrove, where he literally has duct tape holding the still together in some spots. You don't have that, do you?
No. It's all copper welded, and it runs off a hot water boiler, so we can heat our hot water up to 200 degrees if we want. That goes into the still to heat it up. Not that we use 200, but the great thing about that is we can drive the still. We can change the velocity of boil. So that makes a lot of difference to what your end result's going to be. I don't press a button and just walk away. Yeah.
The one thing that really impresses me is the whole variety of Tasmanian whiskies, because there's everything all over the place, from Peter Bignell's Rise at Belgrove to your single malts, and you even do a peated one. How much creativity do you have among the whiskey community and collaboration among the whiskey community in Tasmania?
It's a good industry and good community. Yeah, it really is. I use different malts as well. When I say different malts, from different areas, from Tasmania, from New Zealand, from Scotland, depending on what I want to do.
Where's your peated malt come from? Scotland?
Yes, it comes from Scotland, and also from the South Island of New Zealand. And peats make to the same parts per million, but they taste nothing like each other. And when you think about what grows in New Zealand and ends up as peat, is totally different to Scotland. So your flavours are somewhat different, yeah.
And we're now being told from Gary that Cadenhead's released a 23-year-old Cradle Mountain from back in 1996.
Correct.
So
Gary's still on the same question. We can always leave it to
That's
Gary
right.
for the history
Cradle
lesson.
Mountain, they actually started first.
and Tyrone Cote wants to know if there's any unique to Tasmania finishes that could be done. And you did one with this Pinot Noir finish with Tasmanian wine, but are there any other Tassie finishes that you could do?
Yes, well, that's an interesting point.
Well, and these aren't finishes either, Mark. These are fully
Right.
matured, which is kind of a different flavor as well for single malt.
Single cask.
Yeah, so these are matured exclusively in their specific style of cask. So no finishes. But go ahead, Matthew.
Yeah. 99% of them are done single cask. We have done a bourbon, which we finished in a sherry, only for 20 days, and that made it totally different. Yeah. So, but most 99% of them are single cask, and we're very lucky to have a very good cooperage close by. Well, within 100 kilometres. That's pretty close.
And Mark, Matthew and I've been fortunate enough, he's being extremely humble with everything that he did to set up his distillery and has helped other distilleries in Tasmania set up too. But it's always an honor when I'm there to do some technical hands-on work with the engineer that built a distillery alongside of his house, which is definitely, I think a lot of us have that dream of building our own distillery alongside our house. Whether it's safe or not, that's to be determined. But it's always great getting hands-on experience with him. And oak has always been, at least from my travels and talking to folks, was quite a pain point in Tasmania for a while. It was a lack of cooperages, and you didn't always know necessarily exactly what you were getting. You had a rough idea. And we always enjoy a story about some of the old days of, you think it's a sherry cask, but you could be wrong.
Quite a possibility there, yes.
Now, when you do a port, go ahead.
Sorry?
Go ahead, Matthew.
I do, when we use the barrel, we use them more than once. And I pull them apart and prep them up, shave them, toast them, and char them. You've got to do that when you use them the second time, yeah. So, but I don't do the big barrels from scratch, as I don't have the equipment to do that. Yeah. But,
Not yet.
Not yet.
No, never.
Jules says no.
Who controls the budget for this stuff, Matthew? You or Jules?
I don't reckon I'd have to answer that. I reckon you'd work that one out.
Yeah, I got a pretty good idea on that one. I'm tasting the bourbon cask right now, and this one won a gold in San Francisco a couple of weeks ago. Congratulations. Tell me about the bourbon cask.
Yeah, I'm actually, you shouldn't judge whiskey by its color, but I am drinking the Pinot Noir, so this is clearly not the bourbon cask. But I'll let you speak to it, Matthew and Jules. I know you've done a lot of bourbon releases, but I love all of the single casks we brought into the United States equally, of course, but I am a bourbon matured fan when it comes to single malts. And I was very, very proud of this one because it's one that continues to open up in the glass. It has this amazing custard, citrus. There's a nice grassy, the pup likes it too.
Yes, the dog has decided to make an appearance.
Because of the bourbon cask, I'm telling you.
The dog likes his whiskey.
Excellent.
You going to come up here and nose this? Want to nose it?
I see a tail wag, so that's
Yep, he's wagging his tail. But it's time for you to go upstairs, Bader. Thank you, buddy. Sorry about that.
No, that's all right.
Very obedient.
But I'll let you speak to it, Matthew and Jules, with the the type of, what you feel about your bourbon casks, but I feel sometimes they get left out, bourbon matured, especially coming from wine regions like Australia and Tasmania. I know the Pinot Noir is, the big, bold, juicy fruits, but the bourbon is so ethereal. It's definitely sit in the corner, think on it, lots of layers.
Yeah, you go.
Well, we've probably released less bourbon barrels, really. We've got a few more that we've just bottled, but yes, so we'll be interested to see what happens. But mostly we've probably had the sherry port and our Pinot that has been very, very popular. So yes, will be interesting, but the bourbon is doing well at the moment, and selling quite quickly. So yes, I think we'll see a bit more of that coming through. I think that come from more of our 100 litre casks, so we had to wait a bit longer.
And there was always been a challenge of what barrels have been available. The sherries and ports, there's been more of them available at the beginning when we started than there were in the bourbon barrels. And I think that's because there's a large content of Australian fortified wine industry barrels. And then there's also ones that have come over from Europe. So there has been a limitation of bourbon barrels for us when we first started, yeah.
Our number one barrel was a bourbon, actually. Yeah.
Now
Perhaps that's telling us something.
I'm pouring a little bit of the port cask. Now, is this a regular traditional port cask, or is this a tawny cask from Australia?
That is
a
port cask, yeah.
As far as we know, yes.
As my invoice told me, yes.
I believe the invoice because I imagine port casks are a lot more expensive to get than tawny casks in Australia.
Yes, they have gone up a little bit.
How are you dealing with the supply chain issue down there? Obviously, it's hard to get raw materials to Tasmania to begin with, but how are you doing as far as the supply chain for getting your bottles and labels and stoppers and all that, plus the grain?
We do quite well because of our size. I think, we get a pallet of bottles and it lasts us quite a while, and I'm well stocked with labels. Probably the barley will be the harder thing to get, but we have just had a couple of pallets delivered, but that lasts us quite a lot longer than most distilleries. So yeah, I think we're very
fortunate that we are the size we are, because we're not chasing up hundreds or thousands of barrels. If you were much bigger and you've got to chase those figures up, it would be very difficult. So for us, that I might order, say, 4 Shiraz barrels, that's nothing compared to what other people have to order for themselves, yeah. And the corks from Portugal, and the bottles come in from France. And they
to a local.
Yeah, to a local distributor, which they keep in stock for us. So that's very good, yeah.
We have a comment from Gary, not so much a cask, but he thinks one of your best releases ever was Comedy of Errors. Holy wheat whiskey. There's got to be a story behind this one with a name like that. What's the story?
Okay, I wasn't going to bring it up, but I knew someone would. I received a 1 ton bag of grain, and I was augering it into the what we call a Jackie bin, like a small silo. And when it had all gone in, I noticed it was about 300 mil down from the top. And normally barley would fill it up and you'd have to pat it down to get the lid on. So I hadn't had a good look at it because I just threw the auger into the bag and off we go. And then I thought, well, hang on a minute. They've mismeasured here. And then I had a close look at the grain. Oh, this isn't barley. This is something else. I haven't seen this grain before. So I took a bucket of it, which I normally use just for measuring, and barley would weigh 13 kilo. This weighed about 19. I thought, wow, that's different. So I took a photo of it and shipped it off to my friend who's got a farm and done a bit of farm science, and he sent back the message saying, "That's not barley, Matthew. That's wheat. Looks like brewer's wheat." I go, "Oh no."
But we'd already done a mash run.
Yeah, by the time that happened, I'd already done 1,200 litres in the fermenter. Anyway, so I rang the company and said to them, "You've sent me the wrong thing. You've sent me wheat." And they said, "What do you mean?" I said, "Well, it's wheat. It's not barley. Can you send me the markings on the bag?" And I said, "There isn't any apart from my address." So they sent me another bag of barley. And what happened a few weeks later after that, the gentleman that owned the business rang me up to apologise for what happened. And it did turn into quite a messy debacle for him, because you imagine if a semi-trailer load of it went out somewhere it wasn't marked. So it closed down their warehouses for a little while. Anyway, I still had quite a bit of it left. So I said to him, "What would you like me to do with the remainder of the barley?" "Oh, just feed it to the chooks or the cows, whatever you want to do." And then he said, No, don't. No, hang on a minute. You said you've done a couple of runs with it. Yes. He said, "Well, keep using it because I've got a name for the whiskey." I said, "Oh, what's that?" "Comedy of errors." So that's what the guy, the owner of the company, called it. So I sent him the first bottle.
And as Greg Serafian points out, it's the Aussie serendipity then, or the Tassie version of Wild Turkey's Forgiven, where they screwed up and mixed rye and bourbon together.
Well,
That's about it, yeah.
Wheat whiskey is extremely popular right now, so that is not a bad thing to be, especially in the American whiskey world. So it's definitely a nice addition.
Well, Holly, we need to get some of that in the States. Come on. Where's it all gone?
The thing
We might need another error. Maybe we'll just name it the US error and see if anyone buys it.
There was 100% wheat and nothing else used with it.
So how was it?
Sorry?
How was the whiskey eventually?
Oh, it was quite nice, yes. Yeah, well, very nice.
Different, popular. Lots of people really liked it. There was, interesting feedback. But yes, it's sold out. So, don't think we're going to do it again. No, we're not.
Holly, tell us where the whiskeys are going to be available in the U.S., because I know there are people who are watching who would like to get their hands on them.
Yes, so it's we only have the 4 casks. They all vary in size, so pretty limited. I know that's part of the issue or pain points of some of the New World whiskey producing regions, Tasmania being one. But we're going to work our hardest with Mathew and Jules to see how we can keep a product coming in as often as possible. It won't be a national brand, but we did just release these whiskeys. I guess you could say a small portion of them. They're available for sale direct to consumer. So we're shipping to most states through discoverybottles.com. So if you go over to Discovery Bottles, you'll see all 4 whiskeys. You'll see my tasting notes in there as well. I really had fun writing up the tasting notes, and we did some tasting note videos and lots of reviews to come. And then, so those are available now for a few months. And then we have some key retailers throughout the Northeast that will be taking these in. One, selfishly, will be my shop, which is in Saratoga Springs, New York. So if you are heading to the Adirondacks for the summer, or if you need a trip out of New York City or Boston, you can come visit me at First Fill Spirits. So we will have some here. So you'll see sprinkles of it throughout the Northeast. Like I said, it is available now. And we're still pinching ourselves that we finally, after years and years of talking with you both, have your whiskey here. So I'm very proud to have it.
Oh, it's a pleasure. Thank you.
Holly, tell us the rest about the retail shop, because this was a new venture for you in the last few months during COVID, right?
Yes, yeah, probably, we all went through some major changes over the past couple of years, and I left my role with Bacardi in their single malts and just really wanted to get back into what was driving me for the future of whiskey, which of course Scotch is included in that. But I was always bothering my friends in Tasmania and all over the world about, okay, I don't want to fall out of the loop. Like, let me know what you're up to. What are you working on? And so I partnered up with my friend Charles, who runs the Saratoga Whiskey Club. And we decided in the middle of COVID to open up our own boutique whiskey shop. We have some rums and some Armagnacs, but 95% of the shop is whiskey focused on independent bottlers, American whiskeys, American single malt, Canadian, Irish, Japanese, and we have a whole New World section. The Fannys Bay bottle will take up quite a bit of space, but we're fine with that at my shop. We don't complain about those things because we know that every whiskey is special. But we're 8 months in. It's been such a blast. We love all whiskey, Charles and I, but this shop really is a passion project to bring everything that might be new to the scene or just underrated brands so that people can have a home to come try new things and push the boundaries of flavor. So Fannys Bay is the perfect fit for that. So selfishly, yes, we will be the first shop to have it. Then it will continue to roll out in the fall.
And BMO was wanting to know that these were all cask strength any cask strength offerings. All 4 of these are cask strength, right?
Yeah, it doesn't get much more cask strength than all are over 60%. What's the Pinot Noir 64.8? They all pack a punch. I guess have your water dropper ready, but they really do. And Mark, maybe you can confirm this as well. But they definitely are sippers. They'll last you some time, but they're really great at their natural ABV.
I love them at the natural ABV, and you're right. These are really good sipping whiskeys. I'm sipping the sherry cask now. Mathew, Jules, what can you tell me about this sherry cask one?
No, I can't remember what we said. That's terrible.
Get your spreadsheet. I'll have to give you the cask number, right? Once you gave it to me, you forgot. Now it's in my good hands.
It's cask number 64.
Right. That would be 64. That would be made from Tasmanian barley. 64 is a pretty early one. And
that's
that
a
would
smaller
have been
cask,
yes,
right?
Yes.
20.
Yes, that was a 25-litre cask. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So they generally take somewhere between 2 to 2.5 years, the maceration. So they don't spend a lot of time in the barrel, but you've got to be very careful with it. If you leave it too long, it'll become too wooded because you've got a very large wooded area that you're working with. Yeah. But,
and you have the advantage of being able to bottle after 2 years as opposed to a minimum of 3 in Scotland and a lot of other countries,
yes.
Right?
Yeah. Yes. That's so. No, they've worked quite well for us. We've moved into bigger ones now, hundreds and 200s. But yeah, those smaller casks, if they're prepped correctly and you look after them in the bond room, they come out quite well. Yes.
Oh God! Oh, you're going to love this one from our pal Pete Head. A question for the two of you. His daughter has just announced that she'll be backpacking in Australia later this year and wants to know if there's a possibility of finding a seasonal job in Tasmania.
Unfortunately, we're very small.
There would be with other distilleries.
Definitely go visit
with other distilleries. She can come and visit.
So, okay, Pete Head, you heard that. She can come and visit, but there's no jobs available down there.
I'm in line for that, right? I better be in the queue.
And our pal Greg, happy to see some praise around the world for his favorites. One of his favorite spirits is Armagnac, and he appreciates the fact that you've got that in your shop, Holly. I've always thought Armagnac was a really good, really underrated spirit.
You can get some fantastic, I mean, for years, when I worked at another retail chain, you can get some amazing Armagnac for such a stellar price. And I'm always like, next year is its year. Next year is its year. And it still hasn't quite taken off yet. Maybe it's good to keep some of those things in your back pocket and as a hidden gem. But we are talking about it here at the shop. So we have quite a few.
And Petehead says, thanks. At least they tried. And if you don't shoot, you don't. If you don't shoot, you always miss. So, what are you working on now? What kind of new experimental whiskeys are you working on right now, guys?
Well, we've put down our first 200-litre barrel. That's a Pinot barrel from Sanapius. And we did some experimentation with the toasting and charring of it. And it's peated from New Zealand, South Island of New Zealand. And the way it's looking, it's going to, the time it'll need to be in the barrel is not that lengthy. Normally you would say somewhere around 12, 14 years. It's not going to be anything like that, and it's simply because of how the barrel's been prepped up. I'm not going to say when I reckon it'll be ready because you won't believe me. But it's
got a beautiful colour already, and it's only just over 12 months old.
And you'd expect a sample from a barrel that size, that age, to be very fumey. Quite the reverse. Even to the extent that we've had people wanting to buy bottles, and no, we can't do that. So that's going to be very interesting to see just how long that does take to be fully matured. But when you take a sample out of it, as I said, it already has very good colour, very good flavours from the barrel. And hello, we've got another storm hit us. So that's going to be very interesting. Can you hear that?
Yeah, we can hear it.
You're collecting water that you can use to...
Yes.
Oh, no, it's hail.
Oh, that's not good. That's not as useful.
Yes, we do need water.
Yes.
For the whiskey.
Dave Kuhn wants to know if there's a common tasting note that is a thread throughout Fannys Bay. I thought it was really fruit, because I got consistent fruits and berries through all four of these.
Wow.
And it's interesting that Dave just mentioned thread, because you might have seen on the tasting card that was in the kit. Hopefully you don't lose internet with your hailstorm.
We can't hear you.
It's very, very, very heavy hail.
We can hear it.
We can hear it.
Yeah, the deck is white.
I can see it in Jules's eyes. She wants you to go check on the equipment in the distillery, make sure everything's okay. But for the threads of flavor, I wrote threads of flavor within Fannys Bay, and although these are all wildly different casks and maturation types, what I consistently got throughout all four, and in a lot of that I've tasted, is spice. So, this brighter baking spice. I wrote fruit pie because for me, Mark, it's an older sort of baked, cooked fruit, and not necessarily fortified wine fruit, but this heavier fruit and viscosity. The mouthfeel is always very important to me, no matter what style of whiskey or alcohol I'm tasting. And that's probably one of the reasons I always come back to Fannys Bay and their coastal region. I know it's all relative. Is the coastal air and the sea salt playing a factor? We talk about it in other parts of the world, but this spice, there tends to be this brightness and some of this almost sparkly bright spice that I get in a lot of their whiskeys. And I really think it might be coming from being there right on the coast and having that salinity in the air. So it's a really fun, there's definitely consistent threads in all of their whiskeys that I've had.
And David Taylor wants to know if you'd consider selling 750s in Tasmania.
Probably not.
Once you felt them, these are dangerous weapons. These are they're amazing, but they're...
And Greg wants to know what the production capacity is in LPA. And you may not want to say just because it is so low, but how much do you produce in a year?
About 3,000 litres a year. It's equivalent to what Scotland would spill in a day. So, yeah, we're not big producers. Yeah, about 300 litres. Sorry, 3,000 litres. Did I say 300? Yeah. Goodness me, 3,000 litres.
Then I bought all of 1 year's production.
Yes. Yeah, roughly 3,000 a year is what we produce.
And Ian Bruce wants to know if there's any chance that you might have a similar export deal to the UK, because he would ask family heading over to Scotland later in the year to take a bottle or two over there for him.
That sounds like a plan. It's been difficult to sort of get that happening, but we have had a few inquiries.
Mm-hmm.
And Dave Kuhn is referring to Fannys Bay as the Daft Mill Distillery of Tasmania. Really, that's a really good comparison between little small, although Daft Mill does all the farming itself. They grow all the grain on site. And you guys don't grow your own grain, so.
Yeah.
No. Mathew and Jules have lots of other hobbies. That's why I am in line to maybe get a job there someday, because I remember when I visited, it is right on the beach. It's an amazing coastal community that they're on. And I saw a surfboard next to where you were maturing your stock, Mathew, you'll remember. And I was like, this is my dream. Like, just wake up, go surf, come back, and it's not too hot. That's also not my thing, is super hot humidity. Go out, surf, come back, make some whiskey. And Jules is painting and out swimming, and it's quite the lifestyle that they have out there. So it's a great vibe that you've got going. So I can't see you opening a massive distillery anytime soon, because that might interrupt your good vibes.
Correct.
and it might take away the fun. I mean, we do enjoy it, and Mathew loves it. He can do what he wants. So that's where we're at, I think.
We don't want to expand.
Ian is going to get his family in Adelaide to look out for a bottle of it for him.
Okay.
So, and as Greg points out, at 3,000 liters per year, that's 10 times less than Scotland's smallest one, Avendirg, at 20,000 liters a year.
Yes, what I produce in a year is roughly what they spill when they empty the casks.
It's a rounding error for the big boys.
That's it.
But the whiskey is excellent. You've done very well with it. Thank you for sharing it with us. And
thank you.
I hope you can make more of it and ramp up production slowly over time and keep the quality there, because this is whiskey that people need to try.
Well, you know what's going to happen now, don't you? I won't be allowed inside. I'll be sleeping out in the distillery.
I'll have to come over and help you ramp up production so that we can start bringing more to the United States, right, Jules?
Yes.
Holly, tell folks again where they can order these in the U.S.
Sure. They're all four are available now at discoverybottles.com, just exactly how it sounds, Discovery Bottles, plural. You'll see them there. And then this fall, they'll start to roll out to different retailers in the Northeast. So if you follow Her Whiskey Love and Fannys Bay on social media, Her Whiskey Love is my account. That's Holly. And also Discovery Bottles too. You'll see what stores we start to release it into, so that you can follow along with that. First shop will be here in Saratoga Springs at First Fill.
All right. Well, we have managed to kill 50 minutes or so that nobody's ever going to get back from this one. But you will never get to relive this 50 minutes again. So Mathew and Julie Cooper from Fannys Bay in Tasmania, thank you for joining us. I look forward to getting down there and visiting you guys at some point here in the next year or so. And Holly Seidewand from Her Whiskey Love and First Fill Spirits, thank you for importing these into the U.S. and for providing us with some samples today.
Yeah, thank you, Mark, for having us. I've always followed you, and I love seeing all of the global whiskey stories that you bring to light. And when I finally had the whiskey in hand, I was like, I have to talk to Mark. He's the perfect person to give us his feedback and to share the story. And thanks to Mathew and Jules for me bothering you at 6, 7 a.m. Every day, because that's my evening.
I'm usually up, Holly.
So thanks for hopping on.
Well, next week we're going to have another Writers Roundtable, and one of my guests will be the photographer behind The Art of Whiskey, Ernie Button. He's one of the photographers that has done a lot of amazing things with taking photos in the bottom of a Glencairn glass after the whiskey is dried and taking these absolutely amazing macro photos. And I really can't, me showing them to you on the screen doesn't do justice to them. But not only will we be talking with Ernie and other panelists next week, we're going to give away a copy of The Art of Whiskey next week. So you're going to want to definitely watch. Once again, thanks to my guests, and we will see you next week.
Cheers.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Bye.